in your bag right now. When we look at the transaction improvements, right? Today, a lot of things are manual. Checking on who you're working with, who's your counterparty. I myself worked in more than 40 countries, and sometimes I didn't even know who the person is that's sitting across the table. I couldn't verify that person. I couldn't verify the company, right? There was no transparency. It was very, very difficult. There was no automated system, and this is changing. It's changing to where we can make sure that everybody, be it governments, be it large corporations, but also individuals, get the same level of access to information about companies, and most importantly, also the people behind these companies. There are a lot of threats, of course. New technology. As I said, there's a hype cycle right now, right? There's a lot of money going in. It's uncertain. Some of the technologies that we see that are deployed and where there's a lot of investment going in might actually fail, right? And they sometimes also fail because of the human factor, as I mentioned before, the human factor that is forgotten about. Distributed ledger technology itself is not really new. There are registers, there are digital registers. Just think of the land registers, right? Where you actually know who owns what, when have there been changes. But this is not something that is universal throughout the world. It is something that highly developed economies and countries have actually already implemented because they needed a system that allows trust and also the reliability of information to be available. There's one example that I would like to share with you. A few years ago, like about 2 years ago, there was a project in Honduras where they had a massive problem. It wasn't clear who owns which property. You couldn't go and just find out, okay, this person owns their house, their little hut, their little plot. So there was a government initiative. A government initiative to bring transparency and to also take a leap forward by using distributed ledger technology to make sure that there is a land register. And in this land register, in this new project, there was the possibility for transparency, not only who owned the property, but also which government official made changes, when were there transactions, what are the transactions. There was a full transparency. Now I have a question. So now it's, going into the fourth quarter of 2016, so we're coming to the end of the year, about 2 years later. Where do you think that project stands today? Anybody? It's dead. Well, it actually started, but all of a sudden there was transparency, and it was clear that there was corruption within the government, be it locally, etc., and they pulled the plug on the project. It was the human factor that actually stopped the project, not the technology, right? But the interaction and the human factor, and of course, a system that clearly did not want to take this leap now because all of a sudden everybody was on the same level of information. And there was also another case about a year ago where the idea was that we don't need government. We don't need banks. We don't even need lawyers, maybe, of a group of people that put more than $160 million, $160 million into a distributed autonomous organization, DAO Hub. I'm sure you've heard about it. It was created by two German guys who wanted to change the way we invest in companies. There were 10,000 people that by majority vote could decide that, yes, we want to invest in that startup, in that project, and so forth. The technology worked fine. The funding was there, the money was there. But again, the human factor was the biggest problem because somebody found a way to game the system and draw 60 million out of the system. They didn't disappear, but it was a system that was written by humans, obviously, and it made totally sense. Technically, everything worked, but the human factor was not counted into the system. But the good thing was that through the transparency and also through the technological advance, we could actually then also backtrack what had happened. But here we had a question as well on the technology, borderless, less government, but who do we actually call when the human factor fails the system? Who do you call? Is it a government? Is it an authority? Right now, the regulation is one of the limiting factors in deploying this technology. It's pretty much like building a massive autobahn, a massive high-speed road system, but we don't tell drivers if they can drive on the left or on the right. And this is where we do have to look at how do we create an environment, how do we create a standard, how do we move this new technology beyond this application stage to be part of the infrastructure. And if it becomes part of the infrastructure, then obviously we will not even see it because it will be universal. Because today, I don't think anybody has to drive on the left or on the right. There is regulation, there is a system, right? And moving forward and looking at what does this mean for business transparency? Well, we've created a system that allows you to address and access company information cross-border, giving everybody the same tools, the same power to identify not only the companies and do they exist, but of course also the people behind those companies in order to raise a level of transparency that allows us to build trust back into business. And if we look at the possibility of technology, this is going to be very, very rapid. And we're also going to be able to restart the way we conduct business and go back to the roots, to what it means to create a business, at the same time offer transparency. And I think the technology will help us to achieve this very, very quickly. Thank you very much.